Vocabize, a vocabulary learning app built to gamify and contextualize on the go. So, cue our user persona. This is Diana. She prides herself on being able to hit all quadrants of her city, Tashkent, Uzbekistan, in less than 2 hours. As the coordinator for a community-based tourism organization, she never fails in knowing the perfect restaurant to recommend for a guest. But at 23 years old, her goal is not to stay in Tashkent. In order to run the world as she feels she can, she needs to know the world. She'd like to travel to be the guest and eventually earn an MBA from a university abroad, which wouldn't hurt her prospects in terms of starting her own business, helping her own family, and supporting herself. In order to reach these goals, the TOEFL is the first big milestone in helping her get out of Tashkent. So she's looking for an app that can help her crush on TOEFL vocabulary, but it needs to be an app that can happen in small amounts of time. She's in constant motion, and so it needs to be while she's riding the bus, waiting for a bus stop, in between phone calls, or when something else falls through. She would very much like an app that's customizable. She can add words, change words, remove words, and make it exactly what she wants, where she's not studying anything that she doesn't feel is not useful. And a key point for remembering these terms is contextualization. She would love to be able to add the context in which she learned a word in order to better remember it. She is a strong relational person, and so some way to have a relational connection within the app would really help her memory as well. As she says, I don't need an app that wastes my time, I need an app that works for me. So we developed a quick task analysis, breaking down the certain tasks and the features that Diana would like to see in her app. And from that task analysis, developed a user flow, which set the framework for our initial wireframes. This one was rough. There were a lot of decisions to make and functions to consider, and how do you lay those out in the navigation. One key component was our share component, where at the end of adding content to a card, you could share your context or content via social media. Adding context was relatively easy, although we forgot a few components, but the idea was to be able to add written or visual context. And there's a customizable review where you could choose to resume or start a new review, have the prompt, the definition, the example, the translation. You choose what prompt you would like to see in the review, and you could set the time and what kinds of review would happen. So we took our wireframes, turned it into a prototype, and sent it off to test. We were looking specifically in our testing for the navigation, the ability to add new vocabulary, so our users able to move around in the app and add vocabulary, really key features of making this a usable app. We also were looking for the clarity of our certain learn and review functions. Did it make sense to have those in two different areas? And we are looking at the ease of adding context. Was that relatively easy for users to understand that really key feature of the app? And the results were not great. First of all, the onboarding process was mistaken for the actual app. So the call to action here was not clear. We wanted them to swipe left, and there was no way to navigate back. So most users were stuck here during their first direct task, which was to sign in, and couldn't figure out how to move past the onboarding stage. The next key component was the learn and review functions were rather unclear. Eventually users figured them out, but it took them quite a bit of time to find the review task outside of the learn platform. There was limited direct action from the homepage. As Diana would say, I like being able to save videos straight into the app. But it's such a long way to get there. We had a very long user path to adding a video, and so she would like to see that a little more upfront. And in the actual flashcard feature, the navigation buttons were in different areas. We had created several different ideas, and some of the old ideas remained, and the new ideas were not consistent in terms of labeling and global navigation. Also, the swipe left and swipe right gestures that were intended for seeing meaning or adding context were very unclear. Most users took a long time to navigate and learn where those different areas were and how they could do different functions. So we redrew the wireframes and addressed several of these issues. There were many issues to address, but these were the most imperative for producing our feature or producing this app. We added an explanation of learn and review. We also added a camera feature right here on the home page. We streamlined the global navigation. So on every page there was a label with the home and the account button. And in the actual flashcard feature, we created a flat navigation where you could go to any area of that flashcard. So the definition, example, translation, adding context, by clicking directly on the card to go to the different areas, no more swiping. We also added a call to action button on the onboarding screen to make that more clear and changed the screen style to indicate that it was an onboarding process and not the actual app. So Diana says that when she is the boss and is looking at the second version of our app, she would like to integrate Vocabize with social media to add a feature of social scoring among friends on Vocabize. She would also like to see the ability to import a database in order to create a deck and avoid creating multiple individual cards at the beginning of a deck. So, as the designer, there were a lot of woes and some wows. The user research and user flow process went fairly well. The wireframing and prototyping took quite a bit of time and was a long learning curve in determining how do you begin sketching out ideas and turn those into a real and practical and usable model. I learned that from the very beginning, you should use your persona to get specific. Figure out the user stories, figure out the problem statement, and then begin developing the task analysis and the features and the design of your app from the stories and tasks that are indicated by the persona. I also learned that to create interview questions and testing scenarios with intention and thought and planning was really crucial, and to continue working on forming the correct questions and to make them match to specific metrics. Ultimately, I need to break everything down into little pieces and then put them back together. That's kind of the work of a design team and a designer, and while it may seem like daunting work and I try to avoid it at the beginning, I just have to embrace and accept that that's what I need to do.